Okay, great. We can get started here. As usual, we're recording this. Yeah, so no mic right now. Sorry, I think there's somebody who's on mute. Would you guys mind just going on mute real quick? Perfect. Okay, so we can get started. If folks have specific questions, as usual, we can take those to start with. I have a couple of things from community posts that people have posted this week that are pretty interesting that wanted to run over, but before we get into those, if folks have specific questions, we can start taking a look at those. No, okay. So yeah, if at any point people have questions, feel free to post them in the chat box, or just unmute yourself and ask a question. Okay, so I'll get started here. Start sharing my screen. Okay, I'm actually just sharing the Tulip player. Can everybody see it here? Yep. Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So there's three apps that we wanted to cover today that I think were from pretty good community posts. The first one was a Zebra printer. So essentially, for folks that aren't familiar, Zebra is it's just a printer that that allows you to print any format you want. So you can, using a language that they have, you can go ahead and kind of format your printer, and then you can connect the printer via the Tulip gateway and print to it. An important thing is being able to generate and view what you're printing before you actually print it. So what this is doing here, this on the left side here, this is an input, and then we have a button to generate the label. So for example, you can see that if I change this changed the font size. So you can see in real time before you go in to print the ZPL, to actually print the label, you can use this, this generate label button to demo what will be printed. So I'll just stop sharing my screen actually real quick because I want to show you what it looks like on the app side. So here we go. If I open up the Zebra printer test, you can see, like I was mentioning, essentially, we just have some text input over here. Then we have the button to generate the label. And all it does is it runs a connector function to update the label. And then we display this label here, which is essentially an image. To show you what this looks like over here, I'll just open up the connector, because essentially what we're doing is we're passing in information to the input and then extracting it. So let me see, where is it? It is the, sorry, I forgot. Oh, it's SQL, just regular SQL. Yep. Here it is. So this is essentially, it's using this function here to take some information, replace it, and then it outputs the label, like I said, as an image, which is what you're seeing in the Tulip player over here when you run it. So of course, this is really simple, just text, kind of almost all the way to the top left. But you can also do barcodes. You can do a lot more stuff with ZPL. And this is using a software called Labelary, which is this here. And essentially, it has this online ZPL viewer, like I said, so you can put barcodes, you can put all this information, and you can get quite into the weeds of what you can print and how you can format it. So that's an important way to do it. If you guys want to take a look at the community post, it's over here. I'll just open that up. It's this one here. But yeah, essentially, like to display a preview of the label before printing, and so this is the way that that it will solve. Are any of the folks on the call using ZPL to print out labels with Tulip? Okay, probably should ask that before to see if folks that was interesting to people, but yeah, I think it's still good to kind of know how that's done. Okay, so the next thing that I want to show is the date check. So essentially, here, this person was asking, they have a way that they want to check a date in a table and see if it's expired or not. So if a date in a specific table record is more than 12 days ago, then the Boolean is yes. Otherwise, say no. So she put in this theory, which is quite good. And then we built out a quick app. So I'll show you what this app looks like. So I think it was just like this. Yeah, exactly. So here we have a table record with a date field in it of October 1st at 5 a.m. Now say I subtract 1 day, I calculate the date, which goes to November 9th, so yesterday, and I compare and I say, okay, this is not before the date in the table record. Whereas if I put, say 100 days, I go back to September 1st, click compare, this turns to green. So it means, okay, the state that we're comparing is before the date that is in the table record. So just to show folks what this looks like, is just this date check app here, which of course, the first thing that we do is it loads up the table record by the ID. This table record, like I was saying, it has an ID and a date, it's the date time field. Then here we just have the days to subtract, and to actually calculate the date, we take the current date and time, and then we subtract the input that the user is saving, multiplied by 86,400. This number, all it is because this takes it in seconds, so it converts it from seconds to days. So there's 86,000 seconds in a day, and then that gives us the date to compare, which is this one here. So again, if I put 10, it goes back to 30th of November of 2020. Then once I have the date from the table record and the date that I want to compare to, we can actually go ahead and compare the two dates. So you can see here, if the date that we're creating by subtracting the information is later than the table record date field, then just store the red. But of course, you could do any action you want here. So actually here, Katha wanted to store Boolean. So, you could just add another action to store the Boolean, whatever, but I just wanted to show this, this logic component here.
So we had a similar situation where we wanted to pull the day, the month, or the year out of a date code.
Yep.
And so I created an app that takes and converts the date string output, uses a substitute function in an expression to replace the spaces and the colons with dashes, and then splits the string into an array so you can pull those individual elements from the array.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. So are you familiar with the format date TZ function?
Not off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think because so it's not actually enabled by default, but I can go ahead, or actually, Kaylee, would you mind doing that? Would you mind enabling it for Alistair's instance? I believe. Which instance would you like this on, Alistair? Wait, actually, before we get into that, let me just make sure it's something that would solve your problem here.
So I do believe I've seen those on the expression, the details of the expression editor help page, and I did try to use those and they didn't work. So I went this other route. I figured that they were just no longer part of Tulip.
No, actually they are, but they're just not enabled by default. And I think they're really useful. So I'll show you here. So essentially what we can do is data manipulation store expression. And so you can see here, when I put in format date TZ, the expression comes up. And I think this will actually save you a lot of time. So then the first argument is the current date and time.
Yeah, that seems like, looking at the help article, it looked like it was exactly what I needed, but when I tried it, it didn't work. So I created a workaround.
Yeah, so it didn't work because it's not enabled by default, but we can enable that for you. If you could just drop in the chat the instances, the URLs for which you'd like these enabled, or just even message them directly to Kaylee.
Okay.
In the chat, we can get that taken care of for you.
All right.
Yeah. but then once, so there's either format, there's two of them. There's format and there's parse. So the parse essentially pass in the components as text and it converts it to a date time, whereas the format allows you to specify the format that you want. So, whoops.
Yeah, okay. I think Scott actually ended up doing a workaround with MySQL where he created a connector function to perform date manipulation.
Yeah, so it's that's definitely one way to do it, but it's not the most intuitive way and it takes a long time. So here I'll show you like this simple function, which takes the first argument is a date time, then format that you want, that I'll show you in a second where you can find this format, and then the time zone, and then just save it in a variable. I'll say formatted date, whoops, oh, whatever, okay, fine. And then I'll display this variable here. Now, if I open this up, we can see that it stores it as 12 TH Thursday 2020. So say I wanted to change this instead of, I guess DD is supposed to be in capitals like this. If I do this, it stores it like this. Is this something that would help you?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we were looking for.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. Yeah, so we don't enable these by default, but yeah. Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Kelly. So then to actually look, there's, I think it's this one. There's the other one. So there's this cheat sheet here that I'll drop in the chat. That essentially gives you all the formatting options. So you can see it's really pretty extensive. I mean, it's, you know, DD for lowercase d's gives you like the English full name of the day. 3 M's gives you the first 3 of the month, you know, and it's, you can just read through it and kind of depending on what you put in. So for example, if I wanted this whole format with the day, the month, the day of the month, the year, and the time with PM, I can just put 4 uppercase L's. So if I go in here and I just, instead of this whole thing that I did, I just put in 4 uppercase L's, click this, and you can see that the whole thing, it's kind of cut off now, but the whole time shows up. Okay, perfect. So yeah, that was the date check. And then, oh yeah, go ahead.
Maybe we could add a note in the knowledge base article that those functions need to be enabled. Contact your representative.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think that is a good interim solution, but I think in the long term it should be enabled for all instances. But yeah, in the meantime, we should definitely do that. That's a good point. I'll take note of that. Okay. Yep. So does that make sense to everybody? I know dates can be somewhat complicated at times. So folks have any questions, feel free to ask them or drop them in the chat here. But okay, so moving on, the next thing that the next post that we wanted to highlight, it was actually from a while ago, it was a little over 2 weeks ago, but essentially Dylan was asking about changing the messages. So, you know, by default, you can have the little toast at the bottom of an app that just shows, I'll show you what it looks like for in case folks aren't familiar with it. You can add a new message and we can just say show error, and then we can pass it in a variable. So for example, say you just want to show an error of the date. Once I go in here, it's red and you can see the text coming through. So you can either do it a red, which is what we call it an error, or we can do it show message, which is exactly the same thing, but it's yellow. So you can see that, you know, kind of you get these toasts at the bottom of your app that show up that are useful to show information. And then after a handful of seconds, they disappear. Yep. So that's, it's kind of, it works, but Dylan was asking about changing the color. Just modify the box color as necessary, or at least create a third option for a green box. And essentially his use case was that he was running a check on numeric values and wanted some validation. It's kind of like if you're filling out a form online and they ask you to input an email and you don't put an at symbol, it gives you an error, that kind of thing. So it's really important for validation to be able to like give positive feedback if the user entered the correct information. So the solution that we came up with, I think it is important to like have these toast messages that show up that are different colors. But another solution that works well is using color variables. So I'll show you what this looks like in app actually, email validation. So here, if I put an email that's nonsensical, it's not nonsensical, it's not an email, which shows up as red when I click submit to check. If, on the other hand, I put something correct, oh, no problem, Alistair. If I put in something correct, so it passes the validation, so it has an @ symbol and then a domain and .com, .co, .it, whatever it is, it matches the validation, it turns to green. So again, this is not a valid email because there's not the actual, I don't even know what the first part of the email is called, but it doesn't have that part, so it turns out red. Just to show what this looks like, I can open up here the email validation. So it's a really simple app that has a couple of components to it. So the first one here is an email variable that we're asking the user to input, which is text. Then we have let me just move this one out of the way. We have a variable which is called email validation. And as you can see here, there's the palette. So it's a color variable. And then the last component we have is a button. So you can see that this button it's pretty simple. Essentially what it does is if the variable matches a regular expression, and then what a regular expression is, for folks who aren't familiar, it's a way, it's kind of like a way to validate that a string matches specific parameters. So here, it gets pretty complicated, but we don't need to know the details. You can easily Google these and find lots of examples, but essentially it needs to start with a character, then it needs to have an @ symbol, then it needs to have more characters, then it needs to have needs to end with between 2 and 4 characters. So that's why if we see here, if we go back and we just do .c, it's going to be red. But if we add CO, as you can see there, the limit, that's what this 2 and 4 is saying. It's essentially saying it needs to be between 2 and 4 characters, that very last part of the email domain. So if it passes this, if it matches it, we store green in the email validation, which again is a color variable. Else we store the color red in the email validation. So yeah, going back to the community post here, this is what it looks like. It's the app that we were seeing right now. It's that same one that I'm showing. So just going through, checking that the variable matches the regular expression. If it does, save it as green, else store it as red. So again, it's not exactly a toast, that's something that shows up from the bottom of your screen and kind of it's not like a show confirmation, but it's a really good way of essentially achieving the same result. Does that make sense to folks? Do people have any use cases in which it's important to kind of validate the information that is being entered? That you can either do it by like choosing different types of inputs, so whether it's text, number, whatever, but also like if you need to further validate it, this is another good way of doing it. do people have any good use cases for this?
Yeah, we use it for verifying serial numbers and manufacturing order information in our process.
Okay, cool. So where like these numbers need to match a specific kind of pattern or something?
Right, like say, for example, a manufacturing order may need to start with an M and end with a 0.
Oh yeah, perfect. And you already implemented this?
Yep.
Oh, cool. And it works okay? It's no problems?
Yeah, no, we use
Implemented?
it in almost all of our apps where we have a manufacturing order. Same thing with serial numbers.
Oh, okay. Okay, perfect. And what do you do? Oh, okay, great. People are using it for certain numbers. Yeah. And what do you guys do if it passes or it doesn't pass? Do you guys also have like a color kind of like this to show oh, sorry, I have all these windows open. To show whether it matches the criteria, or do you like just not let it go to the next step?
It depends. I mean, it can quickly show a green that you've successfully entered the correct type of serial number, and it'll pass on to the next step in the app. Or if they enter a bogus serial number, or say like we're working on an assembly that has 2 different types of boards, PCBs, and the serial numbers are different. And if it's expecting a serial number with a string of 7 characters and you scan something with a string of 9, it'll say, hey, that's not the right board, for
Okay.
example.
Okay. Okay, got it. And are these numbers input manually, like with a keyboard, or are they from a barcode?
You're scanning them off a barcode.
Okay, nice. So would you like, would just for folks, would be like something like, let's see, kind of like you put it here when the device barcode scanner outputs at the station, and then you put the validation in here. You have something like this?
Yeah, similar to that. Yep.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, we use a lot of the regular expressions in our triggers.
Okay, oh, cool, yeah. Yeah, actually, I think it was probably a couple months ago, but in office hours, there was a really good, we helped a user build this essentially, so like they would have boxes that had lots of different barcodes on them, and they wanted to let the team members scan them in any order, but store the information in the correct pattern. So essentially, like if it matches, like you were saying, like if it started with an S, then they would go ahead and store that information as a serial number. Then they had like another barcode on the box for the tracking number, for the quantity or whatever. And like we went through and like we built out a pretty big trigger that would allow the team members to scan all the barcodes in any order. Like they didn't have to do it, kind of chronologically, just do it in any order, and it would save the information in the correct place.
Yeah, right. We can scan these in any order. I guess it depends on what the purpose is, but if they have designated spots, and yes, they'll scan them in order, but it won't necessarily tell you that they're in the wrong order.
Okay, yeah, but it's just going to store them in the correct place.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that's really cool.
And that becomes part of the genealogy of the product that we're making. We can pull it up if we need to.
Yeah, perfect. And is this information then stored in a table or in app variables and then completions?
Yeah, it goes into a table.
It goes, okay, great. Yeah, awesome. Perfect. Yeah, do folks have other questions about this, about regular expressions, how they work, about making sure that the correct inputs are being entered into the app?
Gio, I have a question actually.
Yeah.
So if you have like a multi-select, how would you write a function to check that something's been selected?
Huh.
Kind of vague. So like, let's say you have like, like 5 different things that you want to make sure are all filled in, one of them being a multi-select. How would you go about checking that at least one of the, let's say like 3 boxes were selected before moving on?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the multi-select stores the outputs as a variable. So let's just walk through it together here. I'll add, I'll say a variable, say a multi-select, but thanks for asking this, Kay. This is a great question.
No, so I think it stores it as
As a
an
text.
array,
Yeah,
I believe.
yeah, exactly. So you can see,
So-
and it's pretty hard to see, but it's a text, and then you can see the three boxes, the two boxes behind it, meaning that it's an array. So we can do this. We can add a couple of options. We can say option A, option B, and then option C. Oh, whoops. Okay, well, let's put an option D as well. Okay, perfect. So we have this, and now we can go ahead and add a button in here. So we'll say, okay, when the button is pressed, if the variable a multi-select contains, oh no, okay, so that's not what I was expecting was going to happen actually. So we need to break this up into two different things. So we need to say get length of array. So we'll store the length of the array. We'll say, okay, let's store this as array length. So this will be the first part of the trigger. So we'll say store array length. Perfect. And then we'll add another trigger. So this is kind of this is actually a really important concept to understand. It's kind of like you can add multiple triggers to a button, and then depending on the order in which they are over here, you can do things in a pretty clever way. So the first thing, this first action is only to store the length of the array. And let's just display this to see what it's looking like. We'll just say array length. So now we'll test it out. We'll say, okay, I'm gonna select two options. Okay, good. If I select 3, now we have 3. So now that we have the length of the array, we can go ahead and add another trigger to this button. And we can say if the variable array length is greater than or equal to, did you see, you want it to like at least something has been selected?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if it's greater than or equal to 0, then we'll show a message. Whoops, actually we'll just say, and this is actually another good trick to know, is because you see here when I click variable, say I wanted to show the length of the array of how many things are selected, it doesn't show the array length variable that I created because it's not type text, and in messages you can only show type text. But we can get around this by doing an expression, and then we'll go add variable array length, and then we'll just add this, which converts it to a type text. And now this will let us. So that one's going to be yellow if it's greater than 0. Else we'll just show a message with expression array length plus this. And there's actually another function. I always forget what's the new one of this. It's parse. It's to text, I think, maybe actually. Yeah, to text. Here it is. So it does exactly the same thing. Array length. Okay, great. Now we're ready to test it out. So if we go here, this one's going to be 3 because there are items selected. Now if I deselect all of them, it's 0 because I did greater
Yeah,
than.
I think you coded in 0 instead of 1.
Oh yeah, or okay, yeah, I can do that as well, right? Yeah. So now it should be red. Wait, what? So if it's greater than 1, then we're going to show it's going to be yellow.
You did show message for 1 for both. You can do show error if that's what you're
Oh, that's what it is. Oh, thanks. Okay, yeah, perfect. Yeah, so that's a really good way to, I mean, it's, you know, it's really just two very simple triggers, which again, the first one, we get the length of the array from how many items have been selected. And then we just compare it here to a static value. So currently, you know, you can't put triggers on widgets. In the future, you'll be able to also add triggers, so you can say, okay, when an item is selected, and you know, you can have that trigger without having to have an extra button or step enter or scan or whatever else. You know, you can have it all self-contained within the input widget. Cool. Yeah, thanks for asking that, Kay. That was a really good question. Actually, I've never tried doing that, but it's pretty simple.
Yeah, I was trying some craziness with like array contains and then checking for all the options, and I was like, there has to be an easier way. So
Yeah. Well, I was hoping, to be honest, in here we would have gotten, you know, we would have been able to select the, you know, just the variable, the multi-select, and then like use an array comparison in here, but just need to break it up.
Yep.
Or I mean, the other way, like in this case, because all of our options in the multi-select start with option, we could also just do type in option here, and then we wouldn't need to have two different triggers. But of course, this doesn't apply if the options don't all start with option. So here, just because we have option A, B, C, all with prepended with option, it's not always the case. So it's good to kind of know this way as well, to do it with two separate things.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Awesome. Are there any other questions that folks have on the call? Things that would be useful to cover, or cool things that people have been building that you'd like to share? Okay. I think one another thing I wanted to cover in today's office hours is the competition. So I know some folks on the call were had joined last week's office hours, but if you didn't, and I can see here there's some folks that weren't on the call last week. The deadline is tomorrow. So essentially, and let me explain what the deadline is for. We have a competition for a vision use case. Vision is a new feature within Tulip that we're releasing that allows you to add vision capabilities, so computer vision capabilities to your apps. So I can actually, Kaylee, do you mind posting the link to the office hours from last week in the chat here? Thanks. So essentially, you can see that it was like a full office hours. But essentially, you know, you can, there's two main features that have been released right now. The first one is change detector, and then the other one is the jig detector. So I mean, an engineer, Felix, goes through how to set it up. And it's really simple. You know, you kind of like building anything else in Tulip. You start streaming the video from the camera, and then in Tulip you set up your like, either depending if it's a change one or a jig one that you're doing, your regions of interest or your jigs. So if you want to track things, I mean, I'm not describing it particularly well, but essentially it gives computer vision capabilities to your apps without writing a single line of code. So this is a feature that is being released. It's currently in beta. But you know, because we're just starting out with it, we want to see what use cases there are out of the world. There's a competition to win a RealSense camera that, you know, you can just, the two best ideas will receive this camera from Tulip, and you guys can use it for whatever you'd like. Doesn't necessarily have to be this use case, but you know, there's a handful of use cases in here that have been shared. But I mean, it's not that many actually. If, you know, there's still a pretty good chance if you guys have a good use case, submit it. The one with the most likes will get one of the two. Well, I guess the two most likes will get camera. So yeah, I really recommend going through that office hours, understanding what vision is, what it can do, and then if you have an idea, you know, you don't actually have to go out and build the app. You can just submit the idea for the use case, and then the deadline is tomorrow, so you still have some time to go ahead and post it. Awesome, thanks for sharing that, Kaylee. Okay, perfect. So, yeah, do folks have any other questions, thoughts, either on vision or just on building apps in general that would be useful to cover in today's session?
I had one question. It may be it may be more of a general question, but because I don't know too much about like Java and whatnot, so I'm like learning like more about connectors and whatnot. So is the host for just say like a random connector, because there's a lot of random programs that have like free APIs that you can connect to and test and play around with.
Yeah.
Is the host just generally the URL?
Yeah.
For it, or? Okay.
It's the base part of the URL. So I can show you here. So essentially, if you open up connectors, so you get like here, in this case, for example, it would just be geo.tulip.co.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the host. So for example, here we have an Asana connector, which is connected to Asana. The host is everything in the URL except for what comes after the domain name. So any / and then the parameters here, they don't go in here. And also we don't put the protocol because it's always HTTP. And then you can, if it's HTTPS, then as it is here, you put yes. If it's just regular HTTP, you put no, and that's what it does. That's where you define it. But
Okay.
yeah, is there a specific connector that you'd like to connect to?
Well, I was just curious because, you know, like I heard that, you know, Tulip's pretty easy to connect to everything. So I was just like testing it out. So I was testing it with the Spotify API, but it was like going through the directions and how to connect to it. But I just needed that step before because I didn't know exactly what was the
yeah, I
host.
didn't know Spotify had an app. Is it like would you like want to find like the top 20 the top songs that you listened to in 2020 or something?
Kind of. I was just experimenting with it because I just Googled like free APIs to like to do it, and Spotify has a huge Spotify has a lot of stuff for developers.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I'd love to see what folks can build with this actually. But yeah, let's see. I don't know if they don't need authentication, then it should be pretty quick. But let's see. So just go ahead, create the connector. We'll say Spotify, connector type, HTTP, save. Then we'll come in here. We'll put the host, which I pasted everything. I'll go back up to the .com. Well, actually, you know, we can just try it and we'll get an error message. So we'll get the first error message will be, please remove the protocol. And like I said, it's HTTPS. So we'll put TLS yes. Try it again. And then it gives us another error message saying don't contain the parameters. So we'll just do this, test passed, great. So now that we have this, the host has been set up and we can create functions in here. So I'll post everything. I'll remove this one here and I'll click test, no token provided. Okay, you do need to authenticate, but yeah.
Yeah, it goes at least on the Spotify side, it does like show you how to get a token and
okay,
whatnot.
yeah, perfect. So once you have that, oh yeah, here it is. So yeah, you just need to get the token. I mean, it's yeah, but yeah, it's a good question because it can be a little bit confusing to understand when you're creating a connector, which part is the host, what the TLS means, and then where you put the remainder of the thing. So like, for example, actually, even if every single one of their API calls has v1 in it, you actually put that part there in the function itself. So you can't put it, you know, if you try doing this, it's not going to let you. So you just have to have up to the domain. And then in the functions, you can put whatever you'd like, but the host just needs to be up to the domain. So up to the .com.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for asking that. That's a really good question.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So again, if folks have questions, we're going to be hanging out. If not, wanted to ask if there's something useful that would be good to cover in the next sessions over the next couple of weeks. If there are parts of the platform that people kind of are struggling with a little bit more, or just curious to understand how they work, we're happy to kind of use these office hours to help you build what you'd like to do.
Hi, Giovanni. I don't know if you already make a webinar about the table relations that.
Yeah, you mean linking table records?
Exactly, linking tables.
Yeah, no, we haven't done that yet. That feature, I think I need to check. It hasn't actually been released yet, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, okay, I understand.
Yeah, but that's, yeah, for sure we can do that. Yeah, let me see. Yeah, I can prepare something for next week.
Because we do have a lot of tables as of right now, as we're trying to figure out where we go with Tulip, there is a lot of testing. So when
Yeah.
someone new comes to look at our system, I have a coworker now, Delroy, on the meeting. So it's hard to know which table goes, is related to what other table per se. So I don't know if that will help us, the linking tables. We have to change anything to make that easier for us.
Yeah, so I can definitely put something together for next week. But in the meantime, how are you linking them? Because one way that I've seen it done really well is it's kind of putting. You can have like it's kind of like having what's called a foreign key. So say for example, we have a work order table, and then we have I thought I had a product. I can just create a product table. I can say, okay, I have a product table. Let's open it up. Open up the product table. Let's say, okay, description, and then say weight, for example. So I'll go in here. I'll say, okay, the first one is just going to be.
Gio, you're not sharing.
Oh, I'm not sorry. Oh, I stopped sharing. Thanks. Okay, is it sharing now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So chair. So here we'll just say a chair to sit on, for example. Weight, we'll say 46 ounces. So now we have a table with the product, and you can in here in the work orders table, you can go ahead and the product, for example, this can just be a text to a link, the text that a text field that links directly to that other table.
Yeah, and that's what I'd like to know. Is that going to be, can we create those links after? Because we already have those tables created. Can we link those tables now, or should we create new tables with the links and kind of wipe out what we already have?
Oh, I see.
That would be one of my questions.
Yeah. So I wouldn't wipe out everything you have. I think you should just be able to create additional fields within your tables. So, and I can look at, or Kaylee, do you remember off the top of your head when link table records is being released?
We have it on our instance already.
Oh, you have it on your, okay, it is released. Okay, so yeah, that's my apologies. I'll get some.
It has to be enabled. And there's still kinks, I guess, with it. They're still kind of like working through the functionality and things like that because it is so new.
Yeah. So yeah, I can put something together, no problem, for next week. But I definitely wouldn't wipe everything and start from scratch.
Okay.
I would, if you have your tables already set up that contain the information, we can just go in and add additional fields to them.
Mhm. But in that case, we will be repeating, let's say in the example of the part or product name, like the chair, I already have that field on my table, work orders. So I have to create a new field for the product link.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
You
Yeah.
create a new field, and then you can remove the old one. I
Okay.
mean, but it's just, it kind of depends also within your apps, how you use them, you know, like,
Yeah, so I have to go in each app and
yeah, exactly.
replace the field. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if we wanted to do that, do we have to manually enter those new values in that new field, or can we import a CSV?
Huh, that's a great question. I don't know. I can look into that.
I think for that would be pretty much download all your data and reload it. Or well, in that case, you have to create a new table anyway, because you will, if you reload your data, you will be, it won't let you load it because your ID will be repeated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question for me too.
Yeah, but so it's, yeah, I'm not sure. I think maybe if the CSV contains the ID, then you should be able to import it and it might recognize it, but I'm not sure off the top of my head, to be honest. I haven't tried it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, we have some small tables that would be really easy to recreate, but we have some big ones that
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. If you already have lots of information, we don't want to make you go through and
Yeah.
redo it. If you can just add some extra fields to it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll see if I can create like a, well, I don't know where it will be released, when it is. I'll see if I can create a link and see how that works.
Okay. Yep, that's great. And for office hours next week, yeah, we'll have a quick demo that you can go through.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, of course. Okay, great. Yeah, thanks everybody for joining as usual. Hopefully this was useful. Yeah, if folks have other questions, we're going to be hanging out. If not, we'll see you next week at the same time.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Jeff.
Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.